So we wanted to share, thank you everyone for being here. And I just want to share an aspect that of a project that I've been working on with UCSD. And it started out as what's called the Critical Mission Studies. And the intent of this grant was to and is to really look at how the mission period of our people in California and as in Anthony's genocide, Holocaust, sovereignty, expression, and speech related to that this was a huge genocide here for our people. And unfortunately, what we have is we have a severing of historical documentation, really. We have the mission documentation, we have some documentation from anthropological viewpoints, but we don't have a lot of the in-between from our own people relaying stories of what happened and the trajectory of those stories. And one time I heard something that was very poignant and just stands out is when we're heard, we heal. So when we're looking at how the dynamics of the healing movement relates to our voices as Indigenous people, to talk about the healing, to talk about things that happen, that makes me feel good as an Indigenous person to hear our elders, to hear our young people today, Jake in speaking, to hear our elders speak, to hear us relaying those aspects that mean so much on an intricate level of our emotions. And you can see and you can feel the healing. So with that said, with working, we proposed to work on oral history documentation with part of this grant, which was very dynamic because we started it at the onset of COVID. So that presented some difficulties, right? So basically though, I really say, and I think of it this way, okay, so we're basically 25% across the board have we been able to really do what we would like to do within the grant. But I did want to share, and then also with Henry can totally introduce himself, but I do want to say that, yeah, Henry is a professor at ASU. I'm just going to give a brief. And he also is the editor for Red Ink Journal. And I don't know if anyone has ever heard of that, but that's an Indigenous literature journal. And so it's really good to collaborate and be friends with somebody that's kind of working in that direction as well. And he's my brother, friend, Native American church brother, and so, and he's also a roadman. But I mean, I'm just gonna be casual with that one. But okay, so I am going to share kind of what I wrote up, and although it's very brief, I do want to really look at this from the perspective of what we wanted to do. So, and I'm gonna have to take my glasses off because I can't see if okay, so he's not going to. So some of the research documentation that we used was from Michael Conley, which is the Kumeyaay history. I think most people at SDSU might be familiar, certainly Indigenous people, I would imagine, are people who are understanding the land acknowledgement. Michael Conley wrote, Misquish from Campa wrote the land acknowledgement. He's also an author of history, of Kumeyaay history. And then also Pushed into the Rocks, Florence Chapek. Missions of Legacy, A Genocide by rewritten Jeanette Costco. Blood of the Land, an Ipai family story by David L. Toiler. And then the early ethnography of Kumeyaay, edited by Stephen Shackley. And then The Way We Lived, California Songs, Stories, and Remnances, edited with commentary, forwarded by Michael Conley. So as we move forward in determining the interviews and the manifestation, I really want to relay that in the oral history documentation, how valuable it is and how much within our communities you see that sometimes we're thinking our aunties and our uncles and our family members, what they're saying, and we're always hoping that we retain that information in those moments. But now we have the perfect capacity to do it, even though we got state-of-the-art equipment for it to set up the interviews and have, set times. It's now I'm just picking up my phone and going, I want to hear what my mom is saying. I want to record this, or a family member. So that's a really good aspect to it. But I know that within this, Henry can also relate how as far as literature in Indigenous country, how important and imperative that is. And I do want him to talk about that because I think that that gives us a broad view of how this impacts us on a very wide scale. So anyway, thank you, Henry.
Thank you. Handajo, it's a good and beautiful day. My name is Henry Quintero. For those of you who don't know me, I come from really, really good people. I've recently learned over the last few years that my grandpa was one of the children of the Ipai Tipai. Yes, thanks. My grandfather on my father's side is one of the Ipai Tipai orphans of the revolution. He fought over here in Baja with Ricardo Magon. And my mom's side, she's Nashkale, Nakayani, in the Apache people, New Mexico, Arizona. I had a lot of good elderlies encouraging me to go from a MFA in poetry to getting a PhD. As a matter of fact, one of them's in the room right now. Kenneth White Jr. and Kenneth White Sr. When I was young, I needed a place to pray. They were there. This gentleman right here was one of the people who encouraged me to learn my own language after my MFA. And why am I mentioning an MFA when Oletha is asking me to talk about, our own literatures, our own stories? I'll tell you why. Because I want each and everybody in here to know this. I want you to hear the power of it. 25 years ago, some Havasupai, Wallapai friends said, Henry, man, you got to write about these Native American church songs. You're one of the only guys that gets it. Man, I was like, it's our American poetry. They don't know how old it is. I thought about that. It influenced me. Being around people like this, mentors like this, it influenced me. I wanted to do it. So then I go to these really well-known, famous white professors. They have a real authority on whiteness. The sad thing is I believed them. They told me, you're going to have to choose. You can't be a poet and be an academic at the same time. I believed them. I quit writing poetry for a long time. I would sneak it when I was a doctoral student. I wrote this one poem that I put 80 years of Disney history in, and I called it the Great Quetzal Mostela. And now I see it's kind of a prophecy about Elon Musk being such a jerk. So now I know why they didn't want me to write poetry, because it was like a prophecy. We got that in us. We got that diez, we say in Apache, that we got that power. Because when I was 25 years old, I knew there was a shadow right beside Walton Whitman. And I knew that shadow sounded something like this. Heno waka yoido, heno waya, heno waka yoido, ya waka yoido, heno waya, heno waka yoido, heno waya, heno waka yoido, ya waka yoido, ya waka yoida, hene yoy. That's a great old Apache song. That song, you can date it to around Quanah Parker's time. The funny thing is, I don't think I've ever been in a university or poetry system where people went wild over hearing a Walt Whitman poem. And then as I came into my PhD, I understood that I had a community power of poetry, just like this mentor here and this mentor here, because I knew from my indigenous teachings growing up with sisters, with brothers, with relations, what do we care about? Our children. And I wanted a poem like Walt Whitman's. I wanted one that I could know that like somewhere in some teepee maybe in some living room, some weekend, maybe in the middle of the week, someone's gonna sing it. Our sonny boys, our baby boys, we love you so, we love you so, Mama love you so, Daddy love you so, don't you know, we really do, our sonny boys, our baby girl, we love you so, we love you so, Uncle love you so, Auntie love you so, don't you know, they really do, our baby, star shiny bright, you're sleeping tight, our baby girl, sunny boy, you're sleeping tight, we love you so, It goes on. You can put names in it. You can put somebody's, birthday in it. But my wish came true. Some of my nephews and nieces, they sing those songs. That's my uncle's song. He can really get it rock and rollin'. The point is, I studied. We have these literatures. We have a legacy of poetry and song. And we have not been encouraging our own community to put our foot down and know that it goes in the literature section. You can talk to authorities that my mentor here right here right now, Debbie Reese, very famous Indigenous librarian. Some of you will even know it. You want to see a good kids book, good children's story for your kids, a Ipai, Tipai, Chumash, Apache story. You'll go through all the kids sections, but it won't be there. Where is it? It's in the anthropology section. Why is that? Because I tell you truthfully, as a professor, as studying someone among them and their primitive culture, they are afraid of our stories. And I will tell you why. And that's part of the fear that I have here today as a person, as a community member. Right now, you can go on the MLA and you can see universities around the country, there's 170 positions for global Anglophile literature professors. They would rather bring someone from the Caribbean, from India, from New Zealand, to talk about this word that they like to have us fall in love with, decolonization. But they have a problem in English. I'm afraid to tell you, I am sorry to inform you that whiteness in the university system does not understand the word sustainability. You have to have a relationship to sustain something. Us Indian folk, we understand what relation is. So as nice as it is having all these international folks come over here, talk about their literature, talk about decolonization, still, they have no relationship with the earth right here like we do. They don't know our home places. Now, I'm all for colorizing the university. It's just that I think that 10 jobs in Indigenous literature versus 170 is a little mismanaged, especially when we're here on Turtle Island. So I want to let you know, social workers know that it's not just in social work. It has to do with our cultural resiliency, survivance, and taking it further towards prosperity by taking a hold of our own stories. And Not saying that I don't have responsibility either. You all seen all these magazines, not just little magazines, but big magazines. They're going under. They're disappearing. And so over COVID, I had to really talk with my sister of what it means to be an Indigenous journal in Indian country. So we're deciding to change it up. We've decided, first of all, that we have to be published by an Indigenous-owned company. So we're going towards this publisher over in Paula. We're going to go back to old Rolling Stone newsprint because we understand that we can get really high-quality pictures on that, and we don't need to archive because we've got a digital age. And this is why I'm talking to all of you here today. We're interested in the stories of young ones. We're interested in the stories of old ones. And we're interested in everything in between. Because if we want to heal as a community, if we want to heal this country, as we know we can as Indigenous people, teach people how to be gentle with this wonderfulness so we can have it not just for 1 or 2 generations like they think. We think for 7 generations into the future. That's what I see with these universities planning on hirings for literature. They're only thinking 10, 15 years ahead. I had to outline to a dean that like, here, I'm going to do 5 generations for you, but just keep in mind that's only 150 years. So again, what I have to tell you from the reality of loving our Indigenous voice and our Indigenous stories to the point where I don't know what I do with that. I gotta teach. I gotta sing these songs. I gotta talk about Chivato and I gotta talk about Quanah Parker, because if you don't, then all we do is talk about Walt Whitman and Abraham Lincoln, same age period. But how you look at who Chivato and who Quanah Parker helped, just sum it up. They rode the trains all over the United States and brought all these Indian people together, which is now one of the largest, they call it pan-native. But Kenneth White Jr. right there and his beloved, they know it's not really that. It's like, I go to his teepee, I can sing Diné songs, and they're like, oh, thanks for respecting us, brother. He comes down south to like Sibecue. He sings some good Apache songs. So, oh, thanks for respecting us. This pan-Indianism around this holy peyote is understanding that we all have languages. We all have cultures. And because we're Indigenous, we all have that power, that diye of empathy and unconditional love. So if someone's not there for some young one, if they're missing a grandpa or a grandma, that's sad. I crack up. There might be an uncle. Doesn't matter if he's not from another tribe, because he had that empathy, that unconditional love. Hey, your grandpa gave me this song. It's in your language. This is what it means. Oh, you speak my language? Hell no, I don't speak your language. I just learned that song. But that's the beginning of hope. And that's passion. You know, me, they got these 4 things in Native American church. I'm such a simpleton, I have a hard time remembering. Love, hope, faith, charity. I cut it down to this through a good other uncle of mine. They called him Bill Thomas. Some people called him Wild Bill Thomas, but that's another story. Say good things. Do good things. Be good things. Do that, you're going to be all right, he said. So with that, that's what I want to kind of leave you with language. You know, so you young ones who are dancing, all that. You, I'm talking to you. That dance, it's old. Comes from ancestors. And then you're going to add something. When you're long gone, 7 generations, they're going to say, oh, it was that guy in the blue shirt. We're all part of the story. And if we don't pick it up, someone's going to tell a story for us. And their stories aren't as good. So pick up your stories, say something, communicate, heal yourselves. That's all I have to say.